She held a stranger's hand to escape her abusive manager. It was the Mafia Boss's son. Port Garrison clings to the East Coast, a city built on salt and rust. From a distance, it looks like money. All marina lights and glass-fronted restaurants. But get closer, down by the docks where I worked, and you just smell the fish guts and the cold, wet metal. I was Mira Caldwell. I was 22 years old, and I was trapped. The restaurant was Salt and Flint, the kind of place that charged $300 for a seafood tower and served wine in glasses so thin they seemed to break if you looked at them. I was a waitress, which really meant I was also a busser, a polisher. And when the regular guy called out, the dishwasher scrubbing oyster shells in the back, my manager was Ronan Pike, and he was a man whose smiles never reached his eyes and whose specialty was trapping people. He knew my mom was sick. He knew I needed every shift I could get. "Mira, your tables are complaining," he'd lie, pulling me aside during a rush. "Gotta cut your hours." He'd stack my shifts, pushing me into 10, then 12 hours of running heavy trays, but the overtime never showed up on my check. His favorite trick was the broken glass fine. He'd walk past the service bar, palm a cheap champagne flute, and let it drop behind a stack of kegs. A quiet shatter. "That's another $50 from your tips, Mira." He'd sigh, marking it down in his black ledger. "Breakage policy. You know the rules." Tonight was the annual Seafarers Gala. The main dining room was a nightmare of noise, packed with men in dark suits and women in sequined dresses, all shouting over the sound of lobster crackers snapping. The air was thick with perfume and butter. I'd been running plates for 6 hours straight, and my feet felt like bags of broken glass. The kitchen was even worse, a pressurized hell of steam, sizzling and chefs screaming for pickups. I was heading for the rack, my arms loaded with dirty plates, when Ronan grabbed my elbow. His grip was always too tight. "Office, now." "Ronan, I have 3 tables waiting." "Now." He didn't take me to the cramped manager's office. He bypassed the main walk-in freezer and steered me down the hall to the cold prep kitchen. It was a small, stainless steel box where the fish deliveries were gutted before dawn. The air was dead quiet and smelled sharply of bleach and cold iron. He let the heavy door hiss shut, the sound clicking into place like a lock. "You've been sloppy, Mira," he said. His voice was different in the silence, flat and greasy. He was holding a clipboard. On it was a single sheet of paper. "You've been watching the logs, talking to the other girls." My blood went colder than the room, and he was talking about the tips, the credit card slips. We all knew. He was shaving percentages off every table, redirecting fractions of our earnings, but none of us knew how to prove it without getting fired. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." He stepped closer. The wall was right behind me. "This is just a formality. An internal NDA. Says you understand house policy and won't discuss proprietary information." He pressed his forearm against the wall, fencing me in. His other hand gripped my wrist. Hard. "It's about loyalty, kid." He was stealing from us, and this was his insurance policy. This was him trying to make his crime my secret. "No. No." His face changed. The fake smile dropped. "You sign it, or I'm calling security. I'll tell them I caught you stealing from the register. Who do you think they'll believe?" He shoved the clipboard against my chest and pushed a pen into my free hand. I was pinned. The steel counter dug into the small of my back. That's when the side door opened. It was the private service entrance, the one VIPs and owners used to avoid the main dining room. A slice of warm light cut through the cold. A man stepped inside. He wasn't dressed for the gala. No tie, just a dark, perfectly cut jacket over a simple shirt. He looked like he belonged in a different world, one that didn't involve steam or bleach. He stopped, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. He saw everything in one instant, Ronan's body blocking mine, the grip on my wrist, the clipboard, the wall. My heart was a fist pounding against my ribs. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just acted. I ripped my free hand away from the clipboard and lunged. Grabbing the stranger's hand, it was warm, solid. "Please," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Please help me." The stranger didn't tense. He didn't look at Ronan. He just looked at me, his gaze quiet and intense. Then, he took one precise step, shifting his body to shield me. It was a minimal movement, but it put him directly between me and Ronan. He spoke to Ronan. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the cold air. "She's with me." Ronan's greasy confidence shattered. He dropped the clipboard. It clattered onto the steel floor. "Sir, this is a staff-only area, a private matter." "She's with me." Ronan flinched. He stared at the man's face, and a sudden, sick recognition washed over his features. He wasn't just seeing a wealthy guest, he was seeing something else. You're Nico Valente." The name dropped into the room like a stone. The Valente family. Even I knew that name. You couldn't work the docks. You couldn't live in Port Garrison without knowing it. It was a name whispered in connection with the unions, the shipping containers, the real, unseen power that ran the city underneath the shiny restaurants. Ronan took a half step back, just as two of the restaurant's bulky security guards, hired for the event, appeared in the main kitchen doorway. They saw the scene, the manager, the girl in the apron, the stranger. "Problem here, Mr. Pike." One of them grunted, already reaching for his belt. Ronan pointed a shaking finger. "This man is interfering. Get him out." The guards moved forward. Nico Valente didn't brace for a fight. He didn't even look at them. He reached past me, his movements economical and swift, to the emergency exit by the door. With a sharp crack, he shattered the small glass casing of the fire alarm, but he didn't pull the lever. He jammed something small and metal inside, shorting the circuit. A deafening alarm blared through the entire restaurant. Simultaneously, a hiss came from the ceiling vents. Not smoke, it was the expensive, high-pressure chemical suppression system, a thick, white, harmless fog, designed to smother a kitchen fire without ruining the equipment. It billowed out, filling the small room in seconds, creating instant, blinding chaos. I heard the guards coughing, Ronan yelling my name. Nico grabbed my hand, the one I had used to grab him. "Move!" We plunged into the white cloud. He knew exactly where he was going. We hit the service corridor, ran past towering stacks of clean linen, and slammed into the freight elevator. He hit the button. The heavy metal doors slid shut, cutting off the alarm. Silence. There was only the low hum of the hydraulics and the sound of my own breathing. Ragged and sharp, I started to shake, a full-body tremor I couldn't control. I looked down at my apron, smeared with grease and lemon. He let go of my hand and shrugged off his jacket. It was wool, incredibly soft, and smelled faintly of the cold ocean and something clean, like sandalwood. He draped it over my shoulders. The weight of it was grounding. He watched me for a long second, his expression impossible to read in the dim elevator light. He only asked one question. "Do you want to be away from him right now?" Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "What happened?" A practical question. A choice. "Yes," I breathed. The elevator doors opened onto the rear parking lot, the alley behind Salt and Flint. The air was cold, damp with sea mist. A low-slung black coupe sat idling by the dumpsters, its engine a quiet, predatory rumble. This was the line, the one you don't uncross. "If I go," I whispered in, clutching his jacket, "he'll fire me. He'll ruin me. He has things." Nico just waited, his hand on the passenger door. He didn't push. He didn't promise to fix it. He just offered the open door. That's when my phone buzzed in my apron pocket. The screen lit up. Ronan. Like a fool, I answered it. "You little bitch!" his voice screamed, so loud it distorted through the speaker. "You think you're clever, running off with a Valente. You're nothing. I have the security footage from the prep room. You walking in with me? I'll cut it. I'll put it on the internal network. I'll say you were stealing. I'll say you offered me favors. You will never work in this city again. Mira, you'll be scrubbing toilets in the bus station." He meant it. Every word. He would burn me to the ground. I looked at the screaming phone. I looked at the open car door, the leather seat, the quiet man waiting. I hung up on Ronan. I got in the car. Nico slid into the driver's seat. He didn't squeal the tires. He pulled out of the alley, smooth as glass. As we turned onto the dark dock road, I looked back. High on the corner of the brick building, mounted under the eaves, a single red light on a security camera blinked once, a silent witness, recording it all. We drove into the Port Garrison night. The black coupe cut through the industrial parks of the lower district, where the streets smelled like low tide and diesel. Nico Valente didn't speak during the drive. He drove with an efficient stillness, his hands light on the wheel, a stark contrast to the panic still thrumming through my veins. We didn't go uptown, toward the glittering glass towers or the gated communities. He turned onto a dark cobblestone quay, stopping before a massive brick building, a warehouse that looked like it had held tobacco or spices a century ago. Its neighbors were fisheries and cold storage units. A steel freight elevator, the kind that smelled of machine oil and cold metal, took us up. It wasn't plush. It was functional, rattling as it climbed. The doors opened directly into his apartment. My breath caught. It wasn't a penthouse. It was a fortress. A massive, open-plan loft that took up the entire top floor. The floors were polished concrete, softened by old, heavy rugs. Exposed beams the size of tree trunks crisscrossed the ceiling. A serious, industrial-grade kitchen dominated one wall. But the real feature was the entire far wall, a floor-to-ceiling stretch of reinforced glass that looked straight out over the harbor. The lights of Port Garrison, the cranes of the docks, the black, churning water, it was all there, a cold, beautiful, intimidating map. The salt wind howled outside, a high-pitched whine against the glass, but inside it was silent, warm. Low-wattage lamps cast pools of yellow light on deep, comfortable-looking furniture. It was the absolute opposite of Salt and Flint. It was private. I was still clutching his expensive jacket, my server's apron still tied around my waist, smeared with traces of the gala's butter sauce. I felt like a stray dog that had wandered into a museum. Nico didn't hover. He moved to the kitchen, a dark expanse of soapstone and steel, and poured 2 glasses of water from a pitcher. He set one on the heavy, reclaimed wood coffee table in front of me. "Sit down, Mira." I sat on the very edge of the leather couch. He didn't sit next to me. He took a minimalist chair opposite, putting the table between us. He was all about boundaries. "I am offering you a 48-hour agreement," he said. His voice was level, calm, like a doctor discussing a diagnosis. There was no pity in it, which I was grateful for. "For the next 2 days, you will have this space. It is secure. I will have a labor lawyer review your situation by morning. We will begin compiling evidence regarding the wage theft and harassment at Salt and Flint. In exchange," he leaned forward just slightly, "I need you to tell me everything, no omissions, no lie." I stared at him. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the cold, hard reality. I was in a stranger's apartment, a Valente. "Why?" I whispered. "Why are you doing this?" "Ronan Pike put his hands on you," Nico said simply, as if that explained everything. "And he is an employee of the Halcyon Pier Consortium." The name dropped into the quiet room like a block of ice. Halcyon, the rival name. If the Valentes ran the logistics, Halcyon ran the piers, and everyone knew they were animals. "I didn't know that," I said, my blood running cold. I knew he was skimming." "Tell me." So I did. The words came out in a humiliating rush. I told him about my mom's medical bills, the ones that kept piling up, forcing me to take every double, every night shift Ronan threw at me. I told him how Ronan had taken my passport on my first day, claiming it was for HR verification, and how he'd lost it in the system every time I asked for it back, effectively anchoring me to the job. I told him about the timesheets, how he'd edit the digital logs, shaving 15 minutes off the start of my shift, 30 minutes off the end, always daring us to complain. I told him about the breakage fees that came directly out of our cash tips. I tried to report him, I said, the shame burning my throat. I sent an anonymous email to the corporate office and to the Port Garrison Civic Security Office about the tips, about the verbal abuse. What happened? Nothing. The email address? It just stopped working. Bounced back a week later. It was like I was shouting into a void. Ronan just laughed the next day and cut my hours. Nico listened. He didn't interrupt. He just watched my face, his gaze steady, analytical. "That NDA he wanted you to sign," he said when I finished. "It's legally worthless. You cannot be contractually bound to conceal a crime. He wasn't protecting the restaurant's secrets. He was protecting his own." He stood up, walking toward the massive window, his back to me. "The Valente Syndicate is my father's business. I run the logistics arm, the legitimate side. We are in the process of moving all our assets into clean channels." He looked back over his shoulder. "The Halcyon Consortium makes that difficult. They prefer the old ways, and they use men like Ronan Pike to launder their money through businesses like Salt and Flint." The room suddenly felt too small. This was bigger than stolen tips. This was a war, and I had just tripped onto the battlefield. "So this is just a game," I said, my voice hardening. I stood up, pulling his jacket tighter. "You're using me." I could hear Ronan's voice in my head. "You think you're clever, running off with a Valente." "I don't want to be bait, Mr. Valente. I just got away from one monster. I am not interested in being thrown to another or being used as a pawn in your turf war." "You aren't bait," Nico said, his voice sharp, cutting through my fear. He turned fully to face me. "You're a witness. There's a difference. Bait is disposable. A witness has value." He took a step closer. "The PGCSO, the office you emailed, is compromised. Halcyon has allies there. That's why your complaint disappeared. Going to the city police is useless. They will lose the file, or worse, they will tell Halcyon you filed it." "Then what?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "What's the alternative your way?" "The civil route," he said. "We don't go to the cops. We go to the courts. We build a labor case so clean, so documented, that they have to act on it. We'll focus on the wage theft, the passport, the harassment. We fight him in the light where his friends can't protect him." Fight him in the light. It sounded like a promise, but it also sounded naive. "And you get..." "What a win against Halcyon." "I get a rot cut out of my city," he said. "Do you agree to the 48 hours? I looked at him, really looked at him. He wasn't offering to save me. He was offering a transaction, a shield, in exchange for my testimony. It was the most honest offer I'd had all year. "I'll stay," I said. "Good." The tension in his shoulders seemed to ease, just a fraction. "Then we have rules, 3 of them." He held up a finger. "1, no lies between us, ever. I need perfect information to protect you." A second finger. 2, we don't dig into each other's private lives. What's mine is mine. What's yours is yours, unless invited." He paused, his eyes locking on mine, and held up a third. "And 3, you are not a bargaining chip. I will not trade you. I will not use you to get to Halcyon. This is about your case. My resources. That is the boundary. Do you agree?" "I agree," I nodded. "All right." He motioned down a dark hallway. "Guest room is the second door on the left. Bathroom is stocked. Get some sleep." As I started to walk away, he stopped me. "Mira." He held out a phone, a simple, black, nondescript burner phone. "This is yours. It's secure. Only my number and the lawyer's number are programmed in it. Keep your other phone turned off. Ronan will be trying to track it, and he'll be listening." I took the new phone. It felt heavy, cold. Nico turned back to the massive glass wall overlooking the harbor. I saw him press a switch on the wall. I hadn't even noticed the seams in the ceiling. But now, with a low, hydraulic thud, a wall of interlocking steel shutters began to descend. They slowly covered the glass, blocking out the city, the wind, the entire world. "Just a precaution," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the sealed room. But just before the final shutter locked into place in the last sliver of glass, I saw it. A flicker of movement in the darkness outside. It wasn't a seagull. It wasn't a reflection. It was a small, dark shape, hovering about 30 feet from the window, a drone. It had two small, steady red lights, like the eyes of an insect. It swept past the window once, a silent, mechanical scan. Then the steel shutter slammed shut with a final, echoing thunk, plunging the room into the warm, quiet lamplight and locking us in. The steel shutters of the loft remained down. The morning light that filtered through the gaps was thin and gray. Nico was already awake, already working. He had been on the phone since 5 a.m., his voice a low, steady murmur from the other side of the loft. I had showered in the guest bathroom, a space of slate and glass, and put on the simple black t-shirt and gray sweats I found folded on the bench. They were soft, expensive, and clearly his. He ended his call as I walked into the kitchen, where he was staring at a laptop perched on the massive soapstone island. My contact at the Interstate Financial Crimes Directorate just opened a back channel, he said, without looking up. He's a data analyst, not a field agent. He owes me a favor. He's pulled the last 6 months of Salt and Flint's encrypted payment logs. On his screen was a nightmare of scrolling code and numbers. It was meaningless to me. This is everything, Money said. Every credit card swipe, every void, every comp. Now, I need your part. You said Ronan used a code. I leaned over the counter, the cold stone seeping through my shirt. Yes, we all knew it. When a customer's order was wrong, we'd void it with a general comp. But when Ronan was on the floor and a glass broke, he would use a different code. Managerial discretion. Override 73B. He said it was for inventory tracking. Override 73B, Nico repeated. His fingers moved across the keyboard, not typing but executing commands. The screen flickered, the data shifting. He wasn't tracking inventory. He was creating a phantom debit. He isolated the code. A new column populated, rows and rows of figures, all time-stamped. He was pulling $50 here, $100 there, Nico murmured. Always on the busiest nights, always on shifts assigned to servers he knew were desperate, like you. He was stealing, I whispered, feeling a sick vindication. He was laundering, Nico corrected. Watch. He cross-referenced the timestamps from the payment logs with something else. Back-of-house security footage. The restaurant's internal feed dumps to a cloud server. Ronan was sloppy. He used the same password for the payment system that he used for the camera archive. On one side of the screen, the logs showed the 73B code being entered. On the other, grainy. Timestamped footage showed Ronan at the master terminal, his back to the camera, punching in the numbers. The money didn't go back to the house. Mira, it wasn't just a deduction from the tip pool. It was a transfer. Every single broken glass fee was routed to this account. He highlighted the destination, a business name I didn't recognize. Portside Provisions, LLC. A shell, Nico said. Registered 3 months ago. Its primary investor is a holding company owned by the Halcyon Pier Consortium. My breath hitched. So, you have him. We have the digital trail. He shut the laptop. Now, we choose the weapon. He didn't make a call to anyone I would have expected. There were no hushed threats, no summoning of tough guys. He spent the next 3 hours compiling the data, the logs, the screenshots of the shell company's registration, the video files into a single, encrypted file. He addressed it to the Seaforth County Labor Office, a small, underfunded county bureau that handled wage disputes. This is the route, he said, seeing my confusion. Not the PGCSO, not the police. We file a formal wage and harassment complaint, and we attach an evidence file that a county clerk can understand. This avoids the Halcyon network. It forces a state-level auditor to look at Ronan's books. We are not accusing him of being a gangster. We are accusing him of stealing employee tips. It's clean, it's legal, and it avoids pulling you into the war. He hit send, a small, anticlimactic click. The silence that followed was heavy. We had fired the shot. Now we had to wait for the echo. It didn't take long. By that afternoon, Nico's secure phone was vibrating, a single text from a blocked number. "They're asking about data flags at the port. Someone's poking the nest." "Halcyon knows someone accessed the logs," Nico said, his jaw tightening. "Ronan must have gotten an alert. They don't know who or where, but they know there's a leak. They'll start looking for you." A cold dread settled over me. What do we do? "My business is logistics," he said, pulling on a jacket. "I move things. Right now, I'm going to move 3 refrigerated trucks, all taking different, confusing routes around the city. They can follow the mackerel." He paused at the elevator. "Someone will be here in 10 minutes. Her name is Cassia Boone. She's my head of security. Do exactly what she says." The elevator doors closed, leaving me alone. 10 minutes later, the elevator opened again. A woman stepped out. She was tall, lean, with dark hair pulled back in a severe knot. She wore tactical pants and a simple t-shirt, and she moved with a quiet, unsettling grace. Her eyes were the color of a winter sky. "Mira," she stated. It wasn't a question. "I'm Cassia. Let's get to work." She led me to the open area of the loft, by the steel-shuttered windows. There were no mats, no equipment. "Nico wants you protected. I'm not here to teach you how to fight," Cassia said, her voice crisp. "I'm here to teach you how to leave. Ronan pinned you against a wall. He grabbed your wrist. You will not let that happen again." For 2 hours, she drilled me. It wasn't martial arts. It was physics and anatomy. "This is the weak point of any grip," she said, circling my wrist with her thumb and forefinger. "The space between the thumb and the index finger. If he grabs you, you don't pull against his strength. You rotate your elbow, find the gap, and break the lock." She grabbed my wrist, her grip like a steel cuff. I pulled. "Nothing. Rotate," she commanded. I twisted my arm, bone against joint. Her grip broke instantly. "Good. Again." We did it 50 times. Then we moved to corners. "Never let them pin you. Always maintain an exit. If they push you," she demonstrated, pushing me back toward the wall. "Don't absorb the impact. Redirect. Use their momentum. Step into them, to their weak side, and pivot." I was clumsy, sweating, my muscles aching, but with every successful break, every pivot that put me in the open instead of trapped, I felt a tiny, cold spark of agency. I was learning to make space. That evening, the tension in the loft had changed. The initial shock was gone, replaced by a low, simmering hum of suspense. We were in the quiet part of the storm. I found Nico in the kitchen, and my expectations of a mafia boss's life were, once again, completely wrong. He was standing over the stove, stirring a pot of what I recognized as boxed macaroni and cheese. He scooped a large portion into a bowl and handed it to me, along with a fork. He took the rest for himself, leaning against the counter. We ate in silence for a moment. The cheap, processed cheese flavor was absurdly comforting. "Thank you," I said, motioning with my fork toward Cassia's earlier lesson. "She's intense." "She's the best," he said simply. "This," I said, gesturing around the loft, "this clean way of fighting, using lawyers, labor boards, and it's not what I expected from a Valente." Nico stared down into his bowl. "My father and I have different definitions of power. My father's power is a fist. It breaks things. It gets results, but it's messy. It leaves blood, and it always requires a cleanup." He looked up, his dark eyes fixed on the steel shutters. "I'm interested in power that's invisible. Data, contracts, logistics, the law. Power that moves so smoothly. You don't even see the strings." He thinks it's weak. I think it's clean. The distance between us felt smaller. He wasn't just a savior. He was a man with his own ghosts, his own father-shaped shadow. The secure phone on the counter buzzed. It wasn't a call. It was an email, forwarded by the lawyer Nico had hired. Subject notice of immediate suspension and demand for restitution. Nico opened it. My heart stopped. It was from the Salt and Flint corporate office. "Miss Caldwell is hereby suspended, pending investigation into gross misconduct and inventory theft. Furthermore, the company demands immediate restitution for missing assets. What assets? I breathed. Nico scrolled down. There was a file attached, a video clip. He clicked play. It was security footage, grainy and dark, from the camera pointed at the dry storage and wine cellar. It showed me. I recognized the night, about a week ago. I was checking a label on a bottle of red wine for a customer. I held it for a second, then put it back. But the clip was doctored. It was edited. It showed me picking up the bottle. Then, a sharp cut, it showed me walking out of the storage room, my apron bunched in a way that looked like I could be hiding something. Then, another cut footage from last night. Me, running through the parking lot, getting into Nico's black coupe. They cut it, I whispered, my hands going cold. He edited it. He's saying I stole wine. He's saying I ran. Nico didn't say anything. He just scrolled to the bottom of the email. They're demanding I pay for the stolen wine to avoid prosecution. 2 cases of Chateau Petrus. They're demanding $9,000. I looked at Nico, my throat closing. We had sent them a legal file. They had just responded with a public execution. The email was a digital guillotine. $9,000. The number was absurd, chosen specifically to be impossible. Ronan wasn't just lying, he was setting a price on my name. Gross misconduct, inventory theft. He was branding me, painting me as a common criminal, a desperate woman who stole from her employer and then ran into the night with a rich man. The faked video was just the punctuation. I sank onto the couch, the cheap, warm macaroni and cheese I had just eaten turning to cold cement in my stomach. The air in the climate-controlled loft felt too thin to breathe. He's going to win, I whispered. The words tasted like ash. He'll post that video. He'll send that demand to every restaurant in the city. I'll be blacklisted. I have nothing. The tears I had held back since the cold prep room finally came. They weren't loud or dramatic. They were the hot, silent, angry tears of the completely powerless. I dropped my face into my hands, my shoulders shaking. I looked at Nico, and he was standing by the counter, his face a mask of stone. I don't know what I expected him to do. Promise to have Ronan killed, vow to burn down Salt and Flint. He did none of those things. He didn't make a single promise. He just watched the video clip again, the one of me walking out of the wine cellar. His eyes were narrowed, analytical. He's fast, Nico said, his voice flat. This is a halcyon move. They don't fight the evidence. They attack the witness. They poison the well. He shut the laptop. He's not trying to win in court. He's trying to break you before you ever get there. He looked at me, really looked at me, huddled on his expensive leather sofa. He didn't say, "It will be okay." Instead, he walked over to a closet, pulled out a thick, dark wool blanket, and grabbed a small, black speaker from a charging port. "We're going out," he said. "Out!" My voice was thick. "The shutters are down. You said they were watching. That drone." "Not out." He gestured with his chin toward a narrow, black steel spiral staircase tucked into the far corner of the loft, a detail I hadn't even noticed. Up. He led the way. The metal was cold under my bare feet. The stairs opened into a small utility vestibule, and then he pushed open a heavy, insulated door. The sound hit me first, a deep, hollow roar. The wind. We were on the roof of the warehouse. It was vast, flat and tarred, a landscape of ventilation units and low parapets. The wind whipped off the black water of the harbor, cold and sharp, smelling of salt and diesel. It tore at my hair, instantly stinging my tear tracks. Below us, Port Garrison glittered like a circuit board, all cold lights and dark, empty spaces. Nico found a spot shielded from the worst of the wind, in the lee of a massive HVAC unit. He spread the blanket on the gritty surface and sat down. Gesturing for me to join him, I huddled next to him, pulling a corner of the blanket over my shoulders. He placed the small speaker between us. A moment later, music drifted into the night. It was quiet, just a lone guitar, a simple, searching melody. It mixed with the sound of the wind and the distant, constant hum of the city. We sat in silence for a long time. The wind was too loud for easy conversation. There was just the music, the cold, and the endless view. He was a solid shadow beside me. The shaking in my hands had started to slow. "This isn't a fight about facts anymore," he finally said, his voice low, forcing me to lean in slightly to hear him over the wind. "It's about narrative. He's writing his now. We write ours." I turned to look at him. In the strange ambient glow of the city, his face was all shadows and sharp angles. He wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at me. His gaze was steady, intense. It wasn't pity. It was attention, pure, undivided. My heart, which had been a frantic bird, slowed to a heavy, deep thump. I could feel the space between us, just a few inches of cold air. I could feel my own breath, still unsteady, and he didn't move. He just held my gaze, as if asking a question I didn't know how to answer. Slowly, my hand trembling, I reached across the blanket. I didn't try to take his hand. I just rested mine, palm up, on the wool between us. A small, silent offer. He met me halfway. His fingers, calloused and warm, closed around mine. It wasn't a grab. It wasn't a claim. It was an anchor. His thumb brushed over my knuckles, once a single grounding touch. He leaned in, his movement measured, deliberate. He gave me every chance to pull back, to turn away. He stopped an inch from my face, his eyes searching mine in the dark. It was the clearest question I'd been asked all night. I didn't pull away. I held my breath. I nodded, a movement so small it was barely there. I closed the final inch. The kiss was nothing I could have expected. It wasn't the desperate, bruising kiss of a rescuer, or the proprietary kiss of a man taking what he wanted. It was warm. Despite the cold air, it was slow. It tasted of salt and the faint trace of the coffee he'd been drinking. It was just a long, gentle, searching press of lips, a shared moment of stillness in the roaring wind. It felt, more than anything else, safe. It was an answer. A validation. You are not broken. You are here. He was the first to pull back, but only by a fraction. His forehead came to rest against mine. His hand was still holding mine, the other coming up to gently cup my jaw, his thumb resting near the corner of my mouth. His breath was warm on my skin. "Mira," he whispered, his voice rougher now, the sound stolen by the wind. "I'm scared," I whispered back, the admission torn out of me, a truth I hadn't even admitted to myself. "I'm so scared of being trapped, of belonging to someone. First my stepfather, then Ronan. He owned my time, my money, my future. I don't want to belong to anyone ever again." He was silent for a long moment, his thumb stroking my cheek. The simple, repetitive motion was almost hypnotic. "I'm not Ronan," he said, his voice low and certain. "I'm not interested in owning you." He let out a long breath, and it plumed white in the cold. "I have my own shadow. Mira, my whole life has been a fight not to become my father. He believes in force. He believes in loyalty bought with fear. He believes in ownership. I'm trying. I'm trying to build something else. Something clean." He pulled back just enough to look at me again, but I'm afraid that shadow is all I am, that it's all I'll ever be. We stayed like that, two people on a cold roof, defined by the men who had hurt us. He wasn't a savior. I wasn't just a victim. We were just caught. The next morning, the mood in the loft was different. The boundaries were still there, but they were softer, the space between us charged with the memory of that kiss. Nico was waiting by the elevator, dressed not in his sharp jackets, but in dark jeans and a simple Henley that stretched across his shoulders. "Cassia has their attention," he said. "The refrigerated trucks are leading them on a tour of the fish markets. We have a window. You need to get out of this room, and you need a real breakfast." We took a different elevator, a service one that led to a subterranean garage. The black coupe was gone. We got into a boring, gray sedan that blended in with 1,000 other cars. He drove us away from the docks, away from the glass towers, and into the heart of Brickline Market. It was the absolute opposite of Salt and Flint. It was a loud, vibrant, steaming maze of converted red brick factories. The air smelled of roasting coffee, fresh bread and sawdust. Butchers in bloody aprons yelled to bakers, and a row of colorful food trucks blasted music. Nico led me to a bright yellow truck with Breeze Bites painted on the side. A woman with a shock of short pink hair and a full sleeve of tattoos was flipping eggs on the flat top, moving with a speed that was almost violent. She saw Nico and her face split into a wide, gap-toothed grin. "Nico figured you were too good for street meat these days," she boomed, her voice like gravel. "Who's this? You finally get a girl." "Bree Larch, this is Mira Caldwell," Nico said, ignoring her question. He ordered 2 coffees and 2 bacon, egg and cheese sandwiches. "Mira's a friend. She's in a labor dispute with a Halcyon Run place." Bree's smile snapped shut. She handed the coffees over, her eyes, bright and intelligent, immediately sizing me up. "Halcyon Jesus, kid. You okay?" She turned back to Nico. "My old crew and your old crew used to bust heads," she said to me, jerking her chin at him. "I ran with the Gray Point boys. Got out. Nico's logistics. He helped me get the lease on this truck when the banks wouldn't touch me. He's solid." We took our sandwiches to a nearby bench. The food was hot, greasy, salty, and the most incredible thing I had ever eaten. Bree came over, wiping her hands on her apron and lighting a cigarette. "So, you're a server?" she asked. Am, I said, feeling the confusion of it. "I'm a good cook, too. My mom's recipes, soups mostly." "Soups are good. Soups are money," Bree said, blowing a stream of smoke. "Listen to me. Don't go back to him. Don't ever work for another asshole manager. You start your own." "I don't have..." "Nobody has anything when they start." She cut me off, her energy infectious. "The overhead on a brick and mortar is a killer, but a kiosk A pop-up, that's doable. You write a tight menu. 5 items, max, good, cheap ingredients. You blast it on the food share apps. You build your own following. You own your tips. You own you." She grabbed a napkin from her apron and a pen from behind her ear. She started sketching, her hand moving fast. "Kiosk here. You need a commissary kitchen. I know a guy. You need a health permit. That's $300. You can do this, Mira." She was drawing a blueprint for a life I had never, ever considered. A kiosk, my menu, a business, a future that Ronan Pike couldn't touch. A tiny, fragile spark of hope ignited in my chest. It felt almost as warm as Nico's kiss. We went back to the loft, the smell of bacon and coffee clinging to my clothes. I had Bree's napkin, covered in notes, clutched in my hand. I felt lighter. Nico was at his laptop, checking in with the lawyer. "He's filed the countersuit," Nico said, formally accusing Ronan of extortion and attaching the unedited footage of the wine cellar. It was a small victory, a single step. Then, Nico's secure phone buzzed on the counter. A text. He glanced at it, and his entire body went rigid. "Nico?" I asked, the lightness in my chest vanishing. He turned the laptop around. He had pulled up an obscure, encrypted message board, a local forum for Port Garrison service industry workers, a place where they traded gossip and warned each other about bad managers. The post was anonymous. The title read, "Anyone know the girl who ran from Salt and Flint?" My blood went cold. I scrolled down. A new comment posted 2 minutes ago. "Heard she's the one who faked a robbery and ran off with the Valente kid. A real piece of work. Heard she's hiding out with him right now." And below it, a single line of text. It was a Google Maps link. I clicked it. A pin dropped with perfect, horrifying precision, directly on the roof of Nico's warehouse. "They found us," I whispered. "The napkin. My blueprint for a new life slipped from my numb fingers and drifted to the floor. The Google Maps pin. It was a digital stake through the heart. It sat there on the laptop screen, blinking innocently, marking the exact center of our roof. They were not guessing. They knew. The silence in the loft stretched for 1, 2, 3 seconds. It was the heavy, pressurized silence before an explosion. Nico didn't speak. He moved. He crossed the room to an intercom panel by the main elevator, a panel I had never seen him use. His fingers flew across the keypad. At the same moment, his secure phone lit up on the counter. A text message. "Cassia," he said, his voice flat, devoid of all panic. "She's on the street. They're in the building." "Who?" I whispered, and my mouth dry. 4 men, baseball caps. They just forced the freight elevator lock in the lobby. "They're coming up." A heavy metallic thud echoed from the elevator shaft, vibrating through the concrete floor. They weren't waiting for the car. They were trying to override the system. "Not that way." Nico grabbed my arm. He didn't pull me toward the guest room or the stairs to the roof. He pulled me toward the kitchen, past the soapstone counter, toward a blank section of the brick wall. "Where are we going?" "This warehouse was built in 1910, he said, his voice clipped and fast. "It was connected to the building next door for processing. They shared a furnace." He slammed his palm against a section of exposed brick. It wasn't a wall. It was a door, flawlessly disguised. He yanked it open, revealing a narrow, dark void. A blast of cold, screaming wind hit me. It was a maintenance bridge, a narrow, skeletal walkway of steel grating, suspended 6 stories in the air, spanning the 20-foot alley that separated this building from the next. It was open to the elements. "Go, Mira," he commanded. "Now, don't look down." I stepped out into the roaring wind. The grating rattled under my sneakers. The alley was a dark chasm below. The wind tore at my hair, trying to shove me against the flimsy chain-link side. I grabbed the frozen metal handrail and ran. I heard a crash from the loft behind us, the sound of the main elevator doors being forced open. A man shouted. My feet clanged on the metal. Clang, clang, clang. The sound was terrifyingly loud. We made it to the other side. Nico plunged us into the darkness of the neighboring building's service hallway. He slammed the heavy steel door shut and rammed a thick deadbolt into place. It wouldn't hold them for long. "This way, stairs." We were in another warehouse, this one smelling of dust, old paper and cold. We clattered down a concrete stairwell, our footsteps echoing in the enclosed space. A tremendous boom from above. They had hit the bridge door. They were crossing. Their footsteps were heavier, faster, thudding on the concrete stairs just behind us. They knew the building, too. We burst through a fire door onto a long, dim-lit corridor lined with faded green lockers. We were only a floor above the street. "Almost there," Nico urged. A hand grabbed my shoulder, yanking me back so hard my teeth snapped together. One of them, he had moved with a frightening, silent speed. He was wearing a dark hoodie under a denim jacket, the baseball cap pulled low, shadowing his face. He smelled of stale beer and wet wool. He grabbed my left arm, his fingers digging into the muscle, spinning me toward the wall. It was the same grip, the same wall, the same feeling of being pinned. Ronan. Cassia's voice echoed in my head. "Find the gap, rotate the elbow." I didn't scream. I didn't pull. I stopped fighting, rotated my entire arm inward, aiming my elbow toward his thumb. The motion was awkward, unnatural, and it broke his grip instantly. He grunted, his fingers slipping. It only bought me half a second, but I wasn't done. I pivoted, just as she'd taught me, stepping into his space instead of away from it. I slammed the heel of my free hand onto the delicate bones of his wrist. He howled, a sharp, surprised sound, and cradled his arm. But there were 2 more right behind him. They were in the corridor. We were trapped. Nico was in front of me. He didn't raise his fists. He wasn't a brawler. He was an escape artist. He slammed his hand against a red fire safety box on the wall, but he didn't pull the alarm. He ripped the small emergency hammer from its chain. As the 2 men charged, he smashed the hammer not at them, but at the glass of a second, larger box next to it, a CO2 extinguisher. He didn't grab the heavy red tank. He grabbed a small, black canister from his own jacket pocket, a fogger. He discharged it. A thick, acrid cloud of pepper spray instantly filled the narrow corridor. The men choked, screaming as the chemical hit their lungs and eyes. They were blind, clawing at their faces. "Hold your breath, move." Nico grabbed my hand, pulling me low. Beneath the worst of the cloud, we ran past the writhing men, burst through the last fire door, and tumbled out into the building's underground parking garage. The air was cold, damp, and smelled of exhaust. Nico's gray sedan was nowhere. Of course, they would have been looking for it. He pulled me past a row of parked cars into the darkest, most distant corner of the garage. And there, looking completely out of place, was Bree's old, beaten-up minivan. It was a faded, 15-year-old model, a deep blue, with a spiderweb crack in the corner of the windshield. "Bree," I panted, confused. "Bree Larch is many things," Sir Nico said, pulling a key from his pocket and unlocking the driver's side. "She's also my best contingency plan. She knows how to get lost. She left this for us an hour ago." We scrambled in. The van's interior smelled faintly of old coffee and the cinnamon she used for her truck's pastries. He jammed the key in the ignition. The engine groaned, protested, then finally turned over with a rough rumble. Nico didn't peel out. He drove at a perfectly normal speed up the ramp and into the weak, mid-afternoon sunlight. We were just another anonymous, battered family van in a city full of them. We were invisible. He didn't take the main roads. He drove us deep into the familiar, chaotic maze of Brickline Market, slipping through alleys I recognized from that morning. He wove through delivery trucks and past open-air butchers, then turned hard, heading straight for the port. He didn't stop until we were deep in the container yard, a man-made canyon of stacked, multicolored steel boxes. He pulled the van into the shadow of a mountain of red containers and cut the engine. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the mournful, distant cry of a foghorn. I looked down. My entire body was shaking, a violent, uncontrollable tremor. The adrenaline was leaving, and the cold reality was flooding in. The chase, the man's hand on me, the fact that I had hurt him. I tried to speak, but my teeth were chattering. Nico said nothing. He just reached across the worn console, his hand covering both of mine where they gripped my knees. His hand was large, warm, and absolutely steady. His grip was firm, grounding. He didn't pat me, he just held me, anchoring my hands until the shaking started to subside. I finally looked up. He was watching me, his expression unreadable. "You did well, Mira," he said, his voice quiet, rough. "You didn't freeze. You used what Cassia taught you. You did well." The simple, practical praise was almost my undoing. I squeezed my eyes shut and leaned my head sideways, resting my forehead against his shoulder. I could feel the solid warmth of him, the steady, slow rise and fall of his breathing. He didn't stiffen. He didn't move. He just let me borrow his strength, sitting in the silence of the container yard. After a long minute, I sat up, pulling my hands free. He let me go. "They burned the loft," he said, staring out the cracked windshield. "As a location, we can't go back." What were they trying to do? Halcyon isn't subtle. That was their street crew. They weren't there to scare us. They were there to grab you, to take you. The secure phone on the dashboard buzzed. A text. He read it, and his jaw tightened. "What is it?" I asked. "Is Cassia okay?" "She's fine. She's gone. This is from the lawyer." He let out a harsh breath. "The Port Garrison Civic Security Office just released a public statement. They're opening an investigation." A tiny, stupid spark of hope flickered. "That's good. Right, they'll investigate Ronan?" "No." He turned to look at me, his eyes dark. "They're not investigating Salt and Flint. They're investigating you for the $9,000 inventory theft. And they're investigating me for unlawful interference and aiding a fugitive. This isn't the city helping. Mira, this is Halcyon using the city to hunt us," Ronan's complaint. Backed by some of their allies on the force, just became an official warrant. He started the van, the engine rumbling back to life. "We're leaving Port Garrison tonight. I have a house. It's north. It's quiet. They won't find us there." As he shifted the van into gear, my old phone, the one I had kept powered off in my pocket, vibrated. It had been off, but it must have died and restarted when I was running. A text message alert. "Don't," Nico said. But I'd already seen the name on the screen. Ronan. My hands steady now. Opened the message. It was short. "Last chance. You stupid bitch. I know you don't have the real files, but your new boyfriend does. I don't want my scraps. I want the whole thing. The Valente shipping database. Get it for me. Prove you're not just a thief. Or that video of you goes to every news outlet and restaurant association in the country. You have 24 hours to decide if you're a partner or just a common criminal." Ronan's text message was a desperate, sloppy grenade. Nico glanced at it once, his thumb hovering over the screen, and then he simply dropped my phone into the van's glove compartment and snapped it shut. "He's not after my database," Nico said, his voice a low rumble. "He's panicked. He's trying to create leverage out of thin air. He's a drowning man trying to pull us under." He put the van in gear, his focus absolute. "He can't touch us." He drove for 3 hours. We left the industrial grime of Port Garrison behind, the van melting into the northbound traffic. The city's steel and salt gave way to winding, 2-lane roads. The air grew colder, cleaner, smelling of damp earth and pine. We turned onto an unpaved private road, the tires crunching over gravel. The trees grew thick, a dense forest of autumn maples that created a canopy of burning red and gold. Then the trees parted, and I saw the lake. Lake Carrick. It was vast, gray and still as glass, the mist hovering over its surface like a shroud. Tucked into the trees on a small rise overlooking the water was the house. It wasn't a modern glass box. It was a low, solid structure of dark wood and river stone, with a wide porch and a tall chimney already trickling a thin ribbon of white smoke. It looked like it had been part of the landscape for a century. It looked safe. Inside, the house was one enormous room, dominated by a cavernous stone fireplace that crackled with warmth. The floors were wide, dark planks of wood, worn smooth by time. It was the complete opposite of the loft. It was history, stability. Nico dropped our single duffel bag by the door. "This has been in the family for 50 years, he said, moving to the kitchen. "My grandfather built it. It's off the grid. No one outside the family knows it exists." He seemed different here. The tension that always sat in his shoulders, the coiled stillness of the city, had eased. He rolled up the sleeves of his Henley, revealing strong forearms, and began pulling things from the well-stocked pantry. Cans of clams, a carton of cream, onions, potatoes. "You cook?" I asked, pulling off the damp minivan jacket, suddenly aware of how out of place I was. "I eat," he corrected, but a small smile touched his lips. He found a heavy knife and began dicing the onion with an efficiency that was familiar, precise. Economical movements. My grandmother taught me. She said a man who couldn't feed himself was useless. While he worked, I explored. I found a small alcove lined with books and, surprisingly, a vintage record player. I sifted through the albums. They were old. Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Etta James. I put on a record, a quiet, bluesy ballad. The woman's voice, full of smoke and longing, filled the warm, wooden room. The sound of the chopping stopped. I turned. Nico was standing by the counter, knife in hand, watching me. The music, the fire, the smell of the onions cooking in butter, it all combined to create a strange, dreamlike peace. We were fugitives, but in this moment, we were just two people in a cabin. He set the knife down, wiped his hands on a towel, and walked toward me. He didn't say anything, just held out his hand. My heart did a slow, heavy turn. I looked at his hand, the same hand I had grabbed in the cold prep room, the same hand that had held mine steady in the van. I placed my hand in his. He drew me to the center of the wooden floor, in the warm glow of the fire. He put his other hand on my waist, and I lifted mine to his shoulder. We danced, there, in the middle of a safe house, with warrants out for our arrest. We danced, barefoot, On the cold, smooth wood, it was a slow, simple shuffle. His movements were as steady and deliberate as his driving. I leaned my head against his shoulder, and he rested his against mine. I closed my eyes, breathing in the scent of his soap, wool, and the faint, sharp smell of the onions. We moved as one, two shadows in the firelight. For the first time since I'd met Ronan Pike, I felt my muscles truly unclench. I wasn't prey. I wasn't a witness. I was just safe. The song ended. The needle hissed on the vinyl. We didn't move. His hand was still on my waist. Mine was still on his shoulder. I could feel the steady, slow beat of his heart under my palm. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his gaze dark and searching in the low light. His thumb stroked the small of my back, a simple, repetitive motion that made my skin prickle. "Mira," he whispered. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. I looked at his mouth. I thought of the kiss on the roof, the one that had tasted of salt and wind. "Nico," I whispered back. He raised his hand from my waist, lifting it to my face. His fingers were rough, warm. He traced my jawline. His eyes locked on mine. He was giving me every second to pull away. He was asking permission. I didn't move. I leaned into his touch. I nodded. A small, trusting gesture that felt enormous. He didn't kiss my lips. Not yet. He bent his head and pressed a slow, warm kiss to my wrist, right on the pulse point, right on the spot where the man in the hallway had grabbed me, the spot Cassia had taught me to protect. He was erasing the memory. My breath hitched. He kissed the back of my hand, then the base of my throat, his touch gentle, reverent. His other hand held my face, his thumb stroking my cheek. "You are not trapped here," he murmured, his voice thick. "I know," I breathed. He finally met my lips. It was a kiss that started with the same slow, cautious warmth as the one on the roof, but this time, it held no fear. It was a deep, searching kiss that spoke of secrets and shared danger. It was a promise. The heavy jacket I was still wearing, his jacket, slipped from my shoulders, pooling unnoticed at our feet. I buried my fingers in his hair, and his arms wrapped securely around me, pulling me flush against him. There was no hesitation, only a deep, profound recognition. This wasn't being saved, this was being found. He held me as if I were something precious, not something to be claimed. He whispered my name, and in the warmth of the firelight, surrounded by the silent, protective woods, I gave him the trust I had never given anyone else. Later, the soup was forgotten, simmering on the stove. We were on the thick rug in front of the fire, tangled in a wool blanket. The world had shrunk to this one room, to the sound of the crackling logs and the rain that had begun to tap against the windows. I lay with my head on his chest, tracing the lines of his shirt. The vulnerability I felt was new, but it wasn't frightening. "He left on a Tuesday," I said, my voice quiet. Nico's hand, which had been stroking my hair, paused. "Who?" "My stepfather, the one I told you about. I was 9. I stared into the flames. He didn't yell, he didn't hit me, he just packed a bag. He told me he was going to the store for cigarettes. He walked out, and he never came back." My mother fell apart. I looked up at him. It wasn't abuse, it was the silence. It was the waiting for him to come back, realizing after a week that I was disposable, that I wasn't worth a goodbye. That's what Ronan felt like. That's what I'm afraid of, being left behind, being disposable. Nico's expression hardened. He shifted, pulling me closer, his grip firm, proprietary in a way that felt like an anchor, not a chain. "You are not disposable, Mira. Do you hear me?" His voice was a low growl. "You are not." He let out a long breath, staring over my head at the fire. "My father's shadow. It's not just a fear, it's real." He paused, and I knew he was giving me a truth for my truth. "My clean logistics company. It's not as clean as I pretend. It's built on Valente foundations, and those foundations are cracked. My father owes favors, old alliances, old debts to families that are still very much in the old business. Halcyon, I whispered. Worse, families allied with Halcyon, families that hate my legitimate model, they see me as weak. My father's protection is the only thing keeping them from tearing my company apart. If I make a move, a real move, like this one, against a Halcyon asset like Ronan, I'm not just fighting them. I'm breaking my father's truces. I'm fighting my own family, just to do one right thing. He was trapped, just like me, by a man he couldn't escape. The buzzing sound was so out of place it felt violent. It was the secure burner phone, which he'd left on the mantel. He untangled himself and grabbed it. He read the text. A muscle in his jaw jumped. "It's Cassia," he said. "The IFCD contact. He found it." "Found what?" "The money. The shell company Ronan used portside provisions. It's not just funded by Halcyon. The IFCD just confirmed its main payment chain is identical to one Halcyon uses to pay their enforcers on the Gray Point docks. It's the same account. This is it. Mira. This is the golden thread. It connects Ronan's tip skimming directly to Halcyon's criminal payroll." He stood there, the phone in his hand, a crossroads in his eyes. "We have a choice," he said. "A real one." "What choice?" "The old way. My father's way. I take this file to my father's contacts. We use it as leverage. We squeeze Halcyon. They'll drop Ronan so fast he'll bounce, just to protect their larger operation. The charges against you will disappear. It'll be over. In the dark." He watched me. "Or, there's my way. The light. We give this file, this golden thread, to the Harbor Watch, the independent media. We don't just cut Ronan loose. We expose the entire thing. Salt and Flint, Halcyon, the PGCSO. We light the whole rotten system up." I didn't have to think. Ronan had used the darkness to frame me. He had used faked videos and backroom threats. "The light," I said, my voice firm. "He built his case against me in the dark. I want to fight him in the light. I want everyone to see." A slow smile spread across Nico's face. It was the first real smile I had ever seen from him. It transformed him. "The light it is," he said. He was about to make the call, but as he stood, another sound filled the room. A different ringtone. It was coming from his duffel bag, his personal phone, the one he never used. He looked at the bag as if it were a snake. Slowly, he walked over, unzipped it, and pulled out the sleek, black smartphone. The screen was lit. Cairo Valente. Nico's smile vanished. His face went hard, the planes of his cheeks sharp in the firelight. He answered the call and put it on speaker. "Nicholas." The voice that came from the phone was not a voice at all. It was gravel, old whiskey, an absolute crushing authority. It was the voice of a king. "Father." "This foolishness with the Halcyon girl ends now," the voice boomed, impatient. "You have caused enough disruption. I have been informed you have a file. You will bring it to me. Tonight, the family will handle this. The old way." "I am handling it," Nico said, his voice ice. "No," the old man snapped. "You are playing games. You have 24 hours to turn that file over to me. If you do not, your clean logistics company will find itself without a single Valente contract by morning. You will be cut off. You are out. Am I understood?" The ultimatum from Cairo Valente hung in the warm, firelit cabin like a death sentence. The phone call ended with a sharp click, and the silence that rushed in was colder than the lake outside. "What do we do?" I whispered. "We follow the plan," Nico said, his voice a low, hard vibration. He tossed his personal phone back into the duffel bag as if it were contaminated. "We go back tonight. Back to Port Garrison, Nico. Your father just..." "My father is not the only power in this city. He just reminded me why I started this." He picked up the secure burner phone. "We're going to use the light. But first," his eyes met mine, "I have to do this face to face. I will not be threatened into silence." He was not going to the cabin to beg. He was going to the villa to abdicate. The Valente estate was nothing like the cabin. It was an old money fortress on the bay, a sprawling Mediterranean-style mansion of white stone and terracotta tile, surrounded by high walls and immaculate, manicured gardens that looked sterile under the moonlight. The air smelled of old money and the ocean. Kiro Valente was waiting for us in the formal dining room, a cavernous space with a 30-foot ceiling and a heavy mahogany table polished to a mirror shine. He was an older, harder version of Nico, with the same sharp intelligence in his eyes, but none of the warmth. His gaze was like dry ice. "Nicholas," he said, not standing. He was seated at the head of the table. A single, untouched plate of food sat before him. "You are late, and you brought your public relations risk." He looked at me. It was not a glance. It was an appraisal, like a butcher inspecting a piece of meat. He dismissed me in an instant. "Sit," he commanded. We sat. The chairs were heavy, carved and uncomfortable. "You received my terms," Cairo said, picking up a heavy silver fork and then setting it down. His only movement: "You will hand over the file. You will send the girl away. This family will absorb the loss, and we will clean up your mess." Nico stared at his father, his hands resting on the table. "No." The word was quiet, but it landed in the massive room with the force of a gunshot. Cairo's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "I said no. I will not give you the file. I will not send Mira away, and this is not my mess. It's yours. It's the rot that Halcyon represents, the rot you've allowed to fester in this city because of old alliances. I built this city," Cairo slammed his palm on the table, the silver rattling. "I built the foundation that allows your clean little logistics company to even exist. You are a branch on my tree, Nicholas. Do not forget where your roots are." "A tree can grow in the wrong direction," Nico said, his voice level, cold. "The file goes to Harbor Watch. Tonight, we are exposing Ronan, Halcyon, and the PGCSO officials they own. We are doing it in the light." Cairo Valente stared at his son for a long, terrible moment. The air crackled. I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Then you are a fool," Cairo whispered, his voice terrifyingly calm. "You choose this girl, this street brawl, over your family, over your future. As of this moment, every Valente contract with your company is terminated. Every account is frozen. You will be cut off. You will have nothing. You will be nothing. Get out of my house." Nico stood up. He looked at his father, not with anger, but with a strange, cold pity. "I may have nothing," he said, "but at least I'll own it." He turned, took my hand, and we walked out of that cavernous, cold room, leaving the old king to dine alone. We were back in Bree's anonymous minivan, parked in the shadow of a highway overpass. The adrenaline of the confrontation was still singing in my veins. Nico was on the burner phone, his voice clipped, arranging the file drop with the Harbor Watch reporter. "The file is golden," he said. "The IFCD data links Ronan directly to Halcyon's enforcer payroll. It's undeniable." As he spoke, my own burner phone buzzed. A text, not from Ronan, from Bree. "Shit! Mira, check the forums! Now!" My hands trembled as I pulled up the service industry message board. The anonymous post that had doxed us was gone. It had been replaced by something infinitely worse. A new thread posted an hour ago. It was a video link. I clicked it. The footage was grainy, taken on a cell phone from across the bar at Salt and Flint. It showed a customer, a wealthy-looking man in a blazer, sitting at one of my tables. I was leaning in, laughing at something he said. The angle was tight. It showed me taking his credit card. The clip then cut. Now it showed me at the POS terminal. My back to the camera. It cut again, back to the man, who was now looking at his check, his face confused, then angry. The video was a composite of lies, stitched together from different nights. Below it, Ronan's words, posted anonymously. "The truth about Mira Caldwell. She's not a victim. She's a predator. She's been working high-value tables for months, sweet-talking regulars and skimming their card info. She's a con artist who got caught. Don't believe her lies." The comments were a flood. I knew it. She had that look. Scum. Giving the rest of us a bad name. Heard she's with the Valente kid now. Gold digger. Nico finished his call and looked at my screen. His face went dark. "Halcyon is pumping this," he said, scrolling through the dozens of identical, bot-generated comments. "They're not just poisoning the well, they're flooding the entire valley. They're calling me a thief, a whore." I felt the familiar, cold panic rising in my throat, the same shame Ronan had cultivated for months. "He's using the dark," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I wanted to fight him in the light, Nico, but he's already won." "No," a new voice said. I looked up. Bree Larch was standing outside the van, her pink hair a beacon in the dark. She yanked the passenger door open. "He hasn't won shit," she said, her voice a gravelly roar. "He's posting on a coward's forum. You're going to go public. Right now." "What are you talking about?" "Live stream," Bree said, as if it were obvious. "My food truck's social media account has 20,000 local followers. We're going live. You're going to sit in front of that camera, and you are going to tell them your story. All of it, from the beginning." "I can't, Bree. They'll tear me apart." "Let them try," Bree said. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "You let a man like Ronan control your story once. Are you going to let him do it again?" 30 minutes later, I was sitting on a plastic crate in the back of Bree's food truck. The secure phone was propped up on a stack of napkin boxes. Bree hit the Go Live button. My face filled the screen. My heart was a drum. "Hello," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "My name is Mira Caldwell, and I used to work at Salt and Flint." For 10 minutes, I talked. I told them about the 12-hour shifts, the broken glass finds, the passport he'd lost. I told them about the cold prep room, the NDA, and the fear, and then I looked straight into the camera. "Ronan Pike is a thief, but he's not just a thief. He's an asset for the Halcyon Peer Consortium. He's been using our tips to feed their payroll." Nico, standing just off camera, nodded. I took the encrypted file from the burner phone and, with my hand shaking, I uploaded the non-traceable, decrypted public version of the IFCD file directly into the comments of the live stream. "This is the proof," I said, my voice gaining strength. "This is the money trail. He faked that video of me. Because I have this. I am not a thief. I am a witness." The comments were a waterfall. Disbelief, shock, support. Bree stood beside me, a silent, tattooed guardian. We had lit the match. The fallout was immediate. Nico's burner phone rang. It was Cassia. He put it on speaker. "The file's out," which she said, "It's working. Harbor Watch is running with it. But, Nico, we have a problem." "What is it?" "That address leak at the loft. It wasn't an outside hack. It came from inside your network. One of my team." Nico went very still. "Who?" "I don't know yet," Cassia said, her voice tight with frustration. "I'm running diagnostics, but I'm hearing chatter. Someone on my team has an old gambling debt, a big one, at a Halcyon run book. It's possible they were squeezed. I don't know who to trust." "Trust yourself," Nico said. "Lock down the network. Go dark. Find the leak." He hung up, his face a mask of controlled fury, betrayal. It cut deeper than his father's threats. "We have to move," he said. "The file is out. Halcyon will be desperate. They're not just hunting anymore. They'll be trying to silence us. Permanently." The burner phone buzzed again. A text. This one was anonymous, encrypted. "Pike is cornered. He'll trade. He wants his freedom for the Halcyon bosses. Gray Point, Cold Storage 7, midnight. Come alone. He'll give you everything." "It's a trap," I said instantly. "Of course it's a trap," Nico said. He was already checking the clip on a small handgun I hadn't known he possessed. "They're expecting me to be desperate. They're expecting me to believe Ronan would turn on his masters. They want me at Gray Point. So we don't go." "No," Nico said, his eyes glinting with a cold, predatory light I hadn't seen before. "We go. They want me at Gray Point. They'll pull all their resources there, waiting for me. He slipped the gun into the waistband at the small of his back, pulling his dark jacket over it. This isn't an execution, he said. It's a diversion. He won't be there. He's just the bait. Bait for what? Where is the real trap? Nico. He turned to me, his face grim. Ronan is vain. He's arrogant. He's not a dock worker. He's not going to be hiding in a freezing fish locker. He's going to be somewhere he feels powerful, somewhere he feels safe, somewhere he can celebrate. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The gala, I whispered. Nico nodded. Salt and Flint. Tonight is the annual Fisherman's Feast charity gala. It's his kingdom. It's packed with the city's elite, including, he added, his voice like iron, half the senior command of the Port Garrison Civic Security Office. Ronan wasn't at Gray Point, waiting to be ambushed. He was across town, hiding in plain sight, protected by the very people we were trying to expose. The charity gala, Ronan's kingdom. The text message trap for Gray Point was a clumsy, obvious diversion. But the real trap, Salt and Flint, was brilliant. It was a fortress of public opinion. Ronan was hiding in a crowd of the city's most powerful people, insulated by their influence, his hand being shaken by the very security officials who were supposed to be investigating him. "I'm going in," Nico said, his voice flat. We were still in Bree's van, hidden in the industrial dark. "He'll be watching the front, but Cassia can get me in the back. I'll get to the stage, to the AV booth. I'll project the file." I looked at him, at the hard set of his jaw, the gun he had tucked against his spine. He was going to war. "No," I said. He turned to me, his focus absolute. "Mira, this isn't a discussion. You're the primary target. The warrant is for you. You'll be arrested on sight. Halcyon's men are his private security tonight. You will not be safe. If you go in there, you're the son of Cairo Valente." "Well, I said, my voice shaking but finding a new, hard edge. "You'll be the Mafia Boss's son starting a brawl at a charity event. You'll prove everything your father said about you. You'll prove everything Ronan is saying. It becomes your fight, not mine. It becomes a turf war." "I don't care what it becomes, as long as you're safe," he growled. "I do." I put my hand on his arm, forcing him to look at me. This was it, the final turn, this whole thing. It started because I was worthless, because he could pin me in a cold room, steal my money, and threaten my name. He made me invisible. "I can't let you fight this for me. Nico, if I do, I'll always be the girl you saved. I'll never be the person who won." I saw the conflict in his eyes, the protector versus the partner. "If you're with me, you have to fight the whole world," I whispered, the words tasting like sacrifice. "Your father, Halcyon, the cops, but this one man, Ronan, he's mine. Let me face him my way." He stared at me, his gaze traveling over my face, seeing the terror but also the iron beneath it. He knew I was right. His fist, clenched on the steering wheel, slowly uncurled. "You're a fugitive, moi," he said, his voice rough. "You can't walk in the front door." "I won't have to." A plan was forming, born of 2 years of servitude. He'll expect me to come from the shadows, from the back, like a servant, but I'm not a servant anymore. A new energy crackled between us. This was the strategy. This was his world, the one of invisible power. He grabbed the secure phone. "Bree, we need a diversion, a big one, and we need a ghost." 2 hours later, I was a different person. Bree had worked magic from the back of her truck, a network of favors from the city's underbelly. She had produced a wig, a sleek, dark brown bob that made my face look sharper, older. She gave me a simple, expensive-looking black cocktail dress and a pair of heels I could actually walk in. "A friend in the theater district owed me," Bree said, clipping a tiny, flesh-colored earpiece into my ear. "I'll be your eyes and ears. Kid, parked 2 blocks away. You just walk like you own the place." Nico was coordinating his own part. "Cassia is on site," Nahi said, Dakir, his voice low and intense in my other ear. He had an identical earpiece. "She's motivated. She found the traitor on her team. He's been dealt with. She says she owes you. Ronan's personal office feed, the one he uses to spy on the staff, will go dark at exactly 9:15 p.m. She'll secure the back alley exit. That's your escape route. And you, I asked, my heart hammering. I won't be on the street. I'll be on the water, he said. The gala's main stage has a 20-foot LED screen. They use it for the auction. I'm on a service boat in the harbor with an independent broadcast crew from Harbor Watch. If this goes wrong, if you say the safe word Carrick, I will project the entire IFCD file onto that screen. I will burn the whole place down in 30 seconds. But Mira, what's the objective? What are you going in for? He's arrogant, I said, the plan solidifying. The faked video, the extortion email. He wouldn't have used his personal laptop. He's too sloppy. He'd have used the manager's office terminal, the original. Unedited files are still on that computer. I'm willing to bet he never even deleted them. And the door is locked, Nico said. I still have my shift card, I whispered, pulling the worn, plastic rectangle from my pocket. He forced me to sign for it. He never deactivated my access to the accounting office. Salt and Flint was dazzling. Soft strings were playing. Champagne towers glittered. The air was thick with expensive perfume and the familiar, rich smell of butter-poached lobster. I saw them all. The city's elite, the politicians, the media. And there, by the raw bar, laughing, was the PGCSO chief. Walk, Mira, Bree's voice crackled in my ear. I walked, past the hostess stand, my chin up. I had made a reservation an hour ago, under a fake name. The new hostess, a girl I didn't recognize, smiled brightly. Right this way, madam. She seated me at a small table by the bar. I was a guest. I ordered a sparkling water. My hands resting in my lap and were shaking so hard I had to clench them into fists. I watched the room. Ronan was on the stage, radiating charm, talking about the Salt and Flint family and their commitment to the community. He was a king in his castle. At 9:14 p.m., I stood up and walked calmly toward the restrooms. I didn't look at anyone. Once in the corridor, I bypassed the ladies' room and continued, my heels clicking on the marble. I walked past the thrumming, shouting kitchen, the smell of scallops and steam hitting me like a wall, threatening to pull me back into the panic of that night. Pivot, find the gap. I reached the back of house hallway. It was empty. The door to the accounting office was dark. Cassia now, I whispered. Feed is dark, Nico's voice replied in my ear, his voice tight. You have 5 minutes. Cassia is in the alley. I stood in front of the door. I pulled out my shift card, Mira Caldwell. I slid it through the reader. The light, which should have been red, flashed green with a soft, permissive click. The office was dark, illuminated only by the glow of the server rack. I sat at the manager's terminal. It was logged in. He hadn't even locked it. His arrogance was breathtaking. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely type. Breathe. I opened the file explorer. I didn't need to search. He had a folder on the desktop. Its name was HR. I clicked it. It was all there. The original, unedited security footage from the wine cellar, showing me clearly putting the bottle back, the audio file of his threatening, screaming phone call to me in the alley, the draft of the $9,000 extortion email. He had saved everything. I shoved the small USB drive Nico had given me into the port. A small window popped up. Copying. The progress bar was agonizingly slow. 1 minute gone, 2. Someone's coming! Bree's voice snapped in my ear, sharp with panic. Heavy footsteps, coming down the hall, fast. My heart stopped. The file transfer was at 90%, 95. The doorknob turned. The door flew open, slamming against the wall. Ronan Pike stood in the doorway. His tuxedo was impeccable. His face, which had been flushed with champagne and victory, was now pale with a sudden, horrifying shock. His eyes darted from my face to the wig, to the computer screen, to the blinking USB drive. He understood. You, he hissed. The word was pure venom. He lunged. Not for me, but for the computer. He ripped the USB drive from the port. I didn't know if the transfer had finished. "You couldn't just stay gone, could you?" he snarled. His public charm vanished. The animal underneath revealed. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my bicep in the same brutal grip. "You stupid, stupid little bitch!" "Let go of me, Ronan!" I twisted, trying the move Cassia had taught me, but the angle was wrong, and the heels betrayed me. "You wanted to ruin my party." He was dragging me, his strength terrifying. He hauled me out of the office and down the hallway, back toward the glittering dining room. "You wanted an audience," he yelled, his voice echoing. "You wanted to be famous." He kicked open the service door to the main room. The string quartet, mid-note, screeched to a halt. 200 wealthy, powerful faces turned to stare. The room went dead silent. Ronan didn't care, and he was insane. Fueled by adrenaline and champagne, he dragged me across the floor, right toward the low, carpeted stage where he had just given his speech. "Ladies and gentlemen," he shouted, his voice booming over the sound system's live microphone. He yanked me up the steps, spilling me onto the floor in the center of the harsh, white spotlight. He loomed over me, a triumphant, sick smile twisting his face. "Look what we have here, the little thief from the live stream." He pointed at me as I scrambled to my knees. "She came back. Did you come to apologize, Mira? Or did you come to try and steal the silverware this time?" He had me. He had turned me into a joke. He had won. I was on my knees. The spotlight was a physical weight, hot and blinding, pressing me against the stage. 200 pairs of eyes, the city's most powerful people, were dissecting me. Ronan Pike stood over me, his face a mask of triumphant, public concern. He held the microphone like a weapon. "She came back," he boomed, his voice full of false pity. "Did you come to apologize, Mira, or did you come to try and steal the silverware this time?" A few nervous titters from the crowd. He was a performer, and I was his prop. He was proving his dominance. He was turning me into the trash Cairo Valente had called me. I squeezed my eyes shut, the shame a burning, physical acid in my throat. "Carrick," I breathed, too quiet for anyone to hear. The safe word, "Nico, Carrick." "You see," Ronan continued, leaning in, "this is what happens. This is the desperation we, as community leaders, try to fight." "That's an interesting perspective, Ronan." The new voice was not mine. It was calm, amplified, and cut through the room like a shard of ice. Ronan froze. The crowd turned, murmuring. Nico was standing at the side lectern, the one reserved for the auctioneer. He hadn't run. He hadn't charged the stage. He had simply walked to the second active microphone. He wore the black suit he had acquired from who knows where, and he looked like he owned the building. He didn't look at Ronan. He looked at the AV booth at the back of the room. "But I have another," Nico said. Ronan's face went from triumph to confusion. "Nico Valenti, what is the meaning of security? Get him off the stage." "It's a little late for that," Nico said. Behind Ronan, the 20-foot LED screen, which had been displaying a soft focus loop of happy fishermen, flickered. It went black, and then it lit up again. Not with a video, but with a spreadsheet. My spreadsheet, the IFCD file. It was stark, black and white, magnified 1,000 times. Salt and Flint, payment logs, override 73B, managerial discretion. The crowd went silent. A list of dates scrolled by. Gala night, Valentine's Day, the summer solstice, and next to them, dollar amounts, $50, $120, $75. "What is this?" a woman in the front row demanded, her voice carrying in the silence. "That," Nico's voice boomed, "is the broken glass fee. That is the money Ronan Pike has been stealing from his staff for 2 years. The screen changed, a new graphic, a flow chart. The lines moved from Override 73B straight to a box labeled Portside Provisions, LLC. And from that box, a thick red line moved to a final destination, Halcyon Pier Consortium, payroll account. A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. "He wasn't just stealing tips," Nico announced, his voice devoid of emotion. He was laundering money for a criminal organization. Your tips, your dinner checks. In the front row, I saw the PGCSO chief's face turn the color of ash. He stared at the screen, then at Ronan, as if seeing him for the first time. The trap wasn't just for Ronan. It was for him. Ronan was paralyzed, his mask of charm shattered. He stared at the screen, at the irrefutable, digitally signed proof of his crimes. Nico walked from his lectern to mine. He didn't touch Ronan. He simply took the microphone from Ronan's limp, trembling hand and offered it to me. He didn't speak. He just waited. I took the microphone. My hand was shaking so violently I had to grip it with both. I stood up, my legs unsteady in the borrowed heels. The wig was still in place. I faced the crowd, 200 strangers. My voice, when it came out, was a raw, broken whisper. My name is Mira Caldwell. I took a breath. I found my strength. When I spoke again, my voice was clear, and it echoed through the silent room. For 2 years, I worked 12-hour shifts at this restaurant. For 2 years, Ronan Pike stole from me, and from every other server. He took our tips to pay for broken glass that never broke. He held my passport. He threatened my job. I pointed at Ronan. He actually recoiled. The night of the Seafarers Gala, he pulled me into a cold room. He tried to force me to sign a non-disclosure agreement to cover his crimes. He put his hands on me. He pinned me against a wall. I was trapped. I was terrified. And I had no one. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the amplifiers. I did the only thing I could. I saw a man I'd never seen before, a stranger, walking past the door, and I grabbed his hand. I looked, for the first time, at Nico, and he was watching me, his expression unreadable, but his pride was a palpable thing. That's all it took. One person, one hand. Ronan Pike is a thief, he's an extortionist, and he is a liar. That video he posted of me, it was a fake. But that. I turned and pointed to the massive screen, the damning spreadsheet still glowing behind me. That is the truth. I am not a criminal. I am the witness. Ronan finally snapped. The animal was loose. Lies, he screamed, his voice a distorted shriek. She's a Valente whore. He hacked the system. Security, security. Get them now. He wasn't yelling at the uniformed gala security. He was yelling at the exits. 4 men in ill-fitting black suits, the construction crew, broke away from the doors. They weren't security. They were halcyon muscle. They started moving toward the stage. The crowd panicked. People started to scream, to surge back. Lock it down, a voice shouted. It wasn't Nico. It was Cassia. The main dining room doors slammed shut with a heavy, magnetic thud. Cassia and 3 other people in black. Tactical gear, her loyal team had secured the perimeter. They formed a line, blocking the halcyon men, who skidded to a halt. Confused, they were thugs, not soldiers, and they were cut off. The uniformed gala security, seeing the PGCSO chief nodding grimly, moved in, batons out, forming a second wall. The chaos was contained. It was a standoff, not a riot. The room was a sea of flashing lights, camera phones. But now, professional media crews, the ones Nico had on the boat, were pushing through the service doors, the Harbor Watch team. They were filming everything. Nico turned to me, the chaos swirling around our island on the stage. He slipped off his suit jacket, the one he had worn to defy his father. He draped it over my shoulders, over the simple black dress. It was a perfect echo of that first night. But this time, it wasn't a rescue. It was a coronation. He took my hand. Keep your head up, he murmured. He didn't lead me to the back. He led me straight down the front steps, into the crowd. We didn't run. We walked. The sea of reporters and stunned VIPs parted for us. Flashbulbs exploded, turning the room into a strobing, silent movie. I didn't look down. I didn't hide my face. I kept my eyes forward, his hand solid and warm in mine. As we reached the main doors, I looked back. The PGCSO chief, his reputation on the line in a room full of cameras, was pointing at the stage, at Ronan. Mr. Pike, The chief's voice boomed. "You are under arrest for fraud, extortion, and suspected conspiracy." We saw the first silver glint of handcuffs as two uniformed officers ascended the stage. Ronan Pike, the king in his castle, just stared at them, his face a mask of white, slack-jawed disbelief. The burner phone in my pocket buzzed. A text from Bree. "Halcyon is trying one last blast," spamming the forums, saying the screen was a Valente deepfake. Nico's phone buzzed at the same time. He read it and showed me. A message from the Harbor Watch editor. "File confirmed. IFCD digital signature is authentic. We're running it. It's over." We hit the alley. The cold, wet air of the harbor was the sweetest thing I had ever tasted. We were free. We had won. We ran toward the street, toward the car Nico had stashed. The adrenaline was a wild, laughing thing in my chest. We rounded the corner of the building and stopped. The alley was blocked. A single, long, black car sat idling, its engine a low, powerful rumble. Its headlights were off. A man was leaning against the fender, almost invisible in the deep shadows. He was smoking a small cigar, the red gold tip glowing in the dark. He took one step forward, into the light spilling from the street. It was Kiro Valente. He looked at the chaos we had just emerged from, the distant shouts, the first wail of sirens. He looked at Nico's hand, still holding mine. He looked at his own suit jacket draped over my shoulders. He took a long, slow drag from the cigar and exhaled a plume of gray smoke. "Nicholas," his voice, that gravelly, absolute authority, cut through the night. "You made your scene. You had your fun." He gestured with the cigar. "Now, you choose them." He nodded toward the sirens, the reporters, the light. Or us. Kiro Valente's ultimatum hung in the alley, thick as the cigar smoke. Them or us. Nico didn't look at his father. He looked at me. He looked at his jacket on my shoulders, at my hand still in his. The sirens were closer now. A chaotic symphony. He had just torpedoed his life, his inheritance, his safety net. All for me. For this. He turned back to Cairo. "I'm not choosing," Nico said, his voice quiet, but carrying the same finality as his father's. "I'm not choosing them, and I'm not choosing you. I'm choosing the co-op." Cairo's face, which had been a mask of cold fury, flickered with something I had never seen him display: confusion. "My logistics company," Nico explained, as if to a child. "We're restructuring. As of last night, the employees own 49%. It's a cooperative. The Valente family contracts are void, which is fine. We're keeping the workers. We're keeping the trucks. We're building it clean." He was telling his father he didn't need the empire. He had already built his own, smaller, cleaner world. Cairo Valente stared at his son. He had offered a choice between light and dark, and Nico had simply built his own house in the middle. The old man looked, for the first time, defeated, and he looked old. He dropped the cigar onto the wet pavement, crushing it under his expensive shoe. "You are a fool, Nicholas," he whispered, "and you are no son of mine." He got into the back of the black car. It pulled away from the curb, silent as a shark, and disappeared into the night. Nico stood there, watching it go. He had just lost everything. "Nico," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Your father, your company." He let out a long, slow breath, the tension of a lifetime seeming to leave his shoulders. He turned to me, and in the flashing red and blue lights of the approaching police cars, he smiled. It was that real, transformative smile from the cabin. "I didn't lose everything, Mira," he murmured, his hand tightening on mine. "I just lost the parts I didn't want." He leaned in and kissed my forehead, right as the first reporters rounded the corner. "Let's go home." The aftermath was a cascade, the Harbor Watch story, backed by the digitally signed IFCD file and the testimony of 2 other servers who came forward, was a bombshell. Ronan Pike was denied bail. He was facing a mountain of charges: fraud, extortion, conspiracy, and wage theft. Halcyon Pier Consortium cut him loose immediately, claiming he was a rogue employee, but the damage was done. Their name was tied to his. The PGCSO chief was forced to resign, a state-level investigation was launched into the department, and 3 of his senior officers were suspended, pending review of their connections to Halcyon's payroll. Salt and Flint was closed for a month. It reopened under entirely new ownership, a hospitality group from out of state. The first thing they did was hang a sign in the staff room announcing a new, fully transparent, automated tip share fund. And Nico was true to his word. He lost the massive Valente shipping contracts. His company shrank overnight, but he didn't fire anyone. He met with his drivers, his dispatchers, his mechanics, Cassia, at his side, and offered them new contracts, lower base pay, but a percentage of the profits, a real stake. The Valente Logistics Cooperative was born. It was small. It was lean. It was clean. Time passed. The cold grip of winter gave way to the first damp, hopeful signs of spring. I didn't go back to serving. I took the notes Bree had scribbled on that napkin. I cashed out the meager savings I had. I took out a small business loan, co-signed by Bree Larch. We opened on a Tuesday. Brickline Market was humming with the lunch rush. Our kiosk was small, just a walk-up window painted a deep, calming purple. The sign, hand-painted, read lilac and brine. Bree was at the register, her pink hair a bright beacon. I was in the back, stirring a massive pot of New England clam chowder, the air thick with the smell of thyme, bacon, and the sea. My mom's recipe. Our menu had 5 items. Our prices were for the workers, not the tourists. And on the counter, a small tablet computer faced the customers, its screen showing, in real time, every tip that came in and which employee it was going to. Total transparency. "Line's building," Bree yelled. I looked up, wiping my hands on my new apron. The line was long, a dozen people deep, and standing in the middle of it, patiently, was Nico. He wasn't in a suit. He was in a faded green Henley and worn jeans, his hair a little longer, his shoulders relaxed. He looked happy. He just waited, like any other customer, smiling at me from 30 feet away. When he finally got to the window, my heart was hammering so hard I could barely speak. "Hi," he said, his smile soft. "I'll have 1 chowder, please." "That's $6, I managed, my voice thick. He handed me his card. I ran it. He took the tablet to add a tip. A second later, the public screen lit up. Nico V tipped $100. "Nico," I hissed, my face burning as Bree whistled from the register. "You can't do that." "It's my money," he said, his eyes laughing. "It's a transparent tip. I'm being transparent." He took the steaming cup of soup. "But I think you made a mistake on the founder's board." He pointed to the small plaque we'd hung on the wall, listing the people who had helped us launch. The top line read, "Mira Caldwell." "I think you meant to put my name there," he said. I shook my head, my throat tight. "No, your money helped, but my courage paid for this place. It's my name." He looked at me for a long, quiet moment. "You're right," he said softly. "It is." He took a bite of the soup. "This is the best thing I've ever eaten. Find me when you close." The market was quiet that night. The other vendors had packed up. The string lights overhead cast a warm, golden glow on the empty stalls. I found him on the wooden loading dock steps, just sitting, waiting. I sat down next to him, my muscles aching in a way that felt good, that felt earned. My hands smelled of seafood and dill, not bleach and fear. He handed me a cold beer. We sat in that comfortable, shared silence. "He's gone," Nico said, staring out at the dark market. "My father. He flew to Sicily last week. He didn't say goodbye." "Are you okay?" I asked. "I will be." He took a sip of his beer. "He did one last thing. An anonymous endowment, the Valente Foundation. It's funding 12 full-ride culinary scholarships for immigrant kitchen staff at the community college." I smiled. His way of closing the door. His way of trying to, Nico agreed, the darkness receding. I leaned my head on his shoulder. It felt like home. "I'm writing an article," I said quietly, "for Harbor Watch, an op-ed about wage theft and the illusion of the NDA. They asked me to write a regular column about workers' rights." "Not a victim," he murmured, finding my hand and lacing his fingers through mine. "A guide, a leader." "I'm still scared sometimes," I admitted. "What if I fail? What if Halcyon—" "They tried," he said. "Their lawyers filed a dozen motions against the Harbor Watch story. Slander, libel, corporate espionage. They tried to say the IFCD file was a fabrication, but it was too late. Cassia found 2 other servers who came forward, their testimony, plus the digital signature on the file. It was ironclad. They lost. It's over. Mira." He turned, shifting to face me. "You won't fail. But, if there's ever a day you're scared, you just hold my hand." I smiled, my heart full. "And what about you, Mr. Valenti? You're strong. You've got this." He looked down at our joined hands, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "If you're strong," he said, his voice low and rough, "I'll just walk with you. Is that okay?" "That's perfect." He leaned in, and his kiss was slow and warm and tasted of the cold night air. It was a kiss that held no fear, no shadows, and no desperation. It was a kiss of equals. As we sat there, a projector I had set up whirred to life. On the blank brick wall of our kiosk, a video began to play. It was a silent, grainy, black and white clip. It was the security footage from that first night. I watched myself, pinned against the wall by Ronan. I watched the side door open. I watched the small, desperate version of me lunge, her hand outstretched. I watched her grab the hand of a stranger. It played on a loop, the moment of despair, the moment of choice, the hand that pulled me out of the cold prep room and into the light. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to connect and share your thoughts. Please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and give us some extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.